Yeah, it is another episode of the Autumn Windbags. RJ Clifford, Juan Soto. Let's have some fun today. We didn't go live yesterday. It was my anniversary, 8 years with the old lady. And it was worth it. My presents, she got me 2 Raiders towels because she's sick of me going to the gym using like nice bathroom hand towels as my gym towel. So she got me not 1, but 2 giant Raiders towels that are terrible material. They don't absorb shit, but I love them anyway. Just like my Raiders. Like they don't give me joy, but I love them no matter who they are.
Whenever you feel that the cheap paint crackling and hitting your taint, go Raiders.
I just think of getting a third for Darren Waller. It's like, yeah, this feels about the same.
Oh man, it's starting to look like third was pretty good.
Third had to be done. You just gave blood. You're a hero. Try to get the energy up. Do your best.
Trying, man.
Yeah,
trying.
I'm telling you, you gotta crack open a beer the second you give blood. You're just like,
I had to go back to work over again.
So just say you're dizzy from giving blood and beer.
So I was supposed to give blood yesterday, and my appointment was at 3:00. And they're like, "Okay, you can't eat or drink anything for 12 hours." And I'm like, "Fuck! Well, I'm not going to get up at 2 a.m. to eat." So I didn't eat anything since the night before. Finally, I'm like cranky and like headachy, whatever. I go to the place to give blood, and they're like, "Oh, well, one of the tests that you're running, you have to be here before 9 a.m." And I'm like, "Well, why the hell did you give me a freaking 3 p.m. fucking time then?"
Yeah.
So, all right, I went and got some food and went back to work. And then now today I had to go in early, and I did. And I went back to work, and it was super busy, and I didn't get to like really take a lunch or go to lunch till like 2:30. And I was like, I'm feeling it right now, man.
It's like a lie detector serum. You know what I mean? It's like a truth serum. It's all loopy.
You're getting the truth today.
Right? We'll get it out of you. Well, question of the day. Put it down, pinned in the comment section. Curious what you guys think. If you were Jimmy Garoppolo for 24 hours, what would you do? Would you still give blood, Soto?
I'd give some specimen.
You'd be divvying out fluids somewhere. Jimmy's
someone to get a sample, all right. It took freaking like 7 little tubes out, man. I'm like, God damn, how much do you need? What are you running?
You know what I would do if I was Jimmy G for 24 hours? I would go
2 chicks, man.
2 chicks, same time. What movie is that from? I would go find out if adamantium is real and have it implanted on all my bones so I can't get hurt. I would get PRP injections in every joint in my body. I would take growth hormone by the bucketful to try to strengthen all my ligaments and tendons. You know, like in high school wrestling, like you get a lot of like some people just get bloody noses really easily. You could cauterize the inside of your nose. My brother did that. He would just step on the wrestling mat, his nose would start bleeding. I would even do that. Every single preemptive measure you can take to make Jimmy Garoppolo not be a Fabergé egg and make it through 17 games next season. That's what I would do. Every single steroid, every single, I would buy every brace you can wear, every single thing, every preemptive strike possible to make sure Jimmy G doesn't break.
I think I know what I'd do. I'd probably comb my hair.
Just for 24 straight hours?
Sit in front of the mirror and comb my hair. I haven't combed my hair in about 18 years.
Wow. You're like Homer when he has that dream as a hippie. He's like, Homer, how do you get your hair so robust and beautiful? Shampoo, conditioner, and repeat. Always repeat. He's just like brushing his when
he had that tonic hair. And he got that freaking bowl haircut.
Yeah.
Helmet haircut.
Question of the day. If you were Jimmy G for 24 hours, what would you do? It really is telling when you're like just a guy quarterback that like Raider Nation isn't excited about. But you're like, okay, that guy lives a life that the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the world could only dream about.
Yep.
On that note, Austin Hooper went on the Volume, one of the podcasts over there, and Jimmy Garoppolo and how well he does with the ladies. was a topic of discussion. Here's what he had to say. Take a listen.
I was with him in Nashville. We're just hanging out, having a drink, right? And that was the only time I've ever seen women actually get into a physical altercation over who's going to talk to Jimmy. And the whole time, like, we were sitting having a conversation. Both of them were coming up, being a little thirsty, and Jimmy just being good. Oh, hey, hey, good to meet you, whatever. And it's like, no, I don't want to talk to Jimmy. No, I want to talk to Jimmy. And then we look over, and just a whirlwind of nails, extensions flying. And me, I was like, oh my God, like, is this real life? And you can tell, like, this wasn't Jimmy's first rodeo, because he was just calmly just takes a sip. It's good to see you guys. Just
on to the next play.
And then they're like, where's Jimmy? Where's Jimmy? And you see Jimmy just sneaking the cab. I was just like, that's a quarterback right there.
So, first off, I don't know if Jimmy Garoppolo has the arm or the body to be a successful quarterback for the Raiders, but he's got the swagger of one.
Oh.
That's for effing sure.
Listen,
that is quarterback mentality right there. Stepping over bitches that are fighting over you just because you're bored and want to go home and play Pac-Man.
Bro, look, God bless him, but Kenny Stabler wasn't like the most physically gifted quarterback of all time.
Mm-hmm.
We heard of him freaking taking shots and dropping freaking offensive linemen the night before games and having a cigarette hanging out of his mouth while he's lacing up his freaking cleats.
Mm-hmm.
But he went out there on game day and he made shit happen, dude.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have that freaking low-hanging fruits, you know what I'm saying? You got to have those fucking big balls to go out there and just make it happen.
Is it big balls, though, when he's like fending women off with a stick? Like, what feels like a quarterback to me is if a quarterback's like ugly, but still pulling chicks. Because you're like, okay, this guy's confident. This guy's got game. You know what I mean? Like, those are the guys that impress me the most. They're guys with like just kind of average dudes, average jobs, average looks, but their wife or girlfriend's a 9. And you're like, dude, that guy's. Remember my old roommate Ashley Colgy, or like lived next door to us? Remember that playmate that he was banging for a while?
Yeah, but Ashley had like a 20-pack, dude.
But still, like he was living next door to me, so he wasn't living anywhere special. He was just a whatever job working at like a pizzeria. Like, yeah, he was like right? He was buff, but like playmates. She was on the cover of Playboy.
It wasn't that he was buff. He was buff and ripped.
He's a professional, like he's like an amateur bodybuilder. Like he does competitions.
Like he competes. Yeah, it wasn't like he was just a guy that went to the
gym. Dude.
No, I get it. I understand, but like if you're gonna be a regular dude, you have to be like that caliber of regular dude.
You gotta have
a playmate.
It's the confidence in game that made me think, all right,
this and that's what I'm talking about. The fucking big nuts. Just like whatever, man. I don't give a shit about these bitches. I'm out.
Yeah, but that's the thing is though, like Garoppolo's constantly fending him off with a whip. It's not like that to me is like not impressive.
He's just like, I'm out. It was one thing. He's like, ladies, please don't. Oh, I'll fuck you both. He's just like, I'm fucking tired of this shit. I'm out of here. These bitches are still pulling each other's fucking fake eyelashes out. Yeah. And he's already in a cab fucking dipping because he got
what he should do if he was a real leader, he'd be like, all right, bitches, you have to suck off Colton Miller, you have to suck off Andre James. You're like a 6. You get bars. You have to blow bars. And then after you do that, take a number and you can have sex with me. That's the quarterback leader I want.
Okay. I can see that.
You know what I mean? Because it's like when you're constantly getting hit on by chicks, it's like, right? He still handled it pretty gangster.
It's like, all right, later, guys.
All right. Like stepping over the bitches to get out of there.
The fucking that SpongeBob meme. All right, I'm gonna head out.
The other half of this story, I feel like Austin Hooper is going to be this season's go-to guy to like leak the stories because he's not even in the locker room yet. Right. He's just going off of like when he saw Jimmy in Nashville and he's already got like Garoppolo stories for us. Like all the beat writers saw that and they're like, oh, I got to make friends with Austin because I want to get the stories. And Austin's like not loose-lipped in a bad way.
No, he's going to tell badass stories. Yeah.
Just like good, like give me some cool stories, man. Like, let me know what this team's really like.
Yeah, for sure, dude.
I need that in my life. It was like Richie Incognito for a while. Jalen Richard, remember
Denzel Perryman.
Denzel Perryman. Like those are the guys with story. Like they're all gone now. So now who's going to be our storyteller?
Looks like Austin Hooper. He tells a good
Hooper's
story too.
leader in the clubhouse, right? He tells it like he gets up, he does the motions and shit.
Yeah.
All right.
Gets you involved. Gets you emotionally involved.
Yeah. I mean, if he doesn't, again, these are two players that like maybe they can produce for us, maybe they can't. At least they can produce some great stories. You know what I mean?
Word.
In the event this season doesn't go the way we want, you got to cling on to something. And I get some great stories out of these two guys.
Hopefully.
So that's the new quarterback. The old quarterback did a sit down with the family. The Cars interviewed Cars. That should be the name of the doing interviews in cars. Derek Carr was on the Harvester podcast and talked about a bunch of shit. Most of it not really that big of a deal. But one of the ones that really stuck with me was he was talking about kind of like we've talked about all the time, that magic that was the end 2 seasons ago when Raiders went on that 4-game win streak, made it to the playoffs, beating teams that were so much more talented than us, but just something was there. Something was in the water in Las Vegas that made this team overcome losing Gruden, tragedy with Ruggs, new interim coach, all this crazy shit, right? And Derek Carr addressed that. That's what he had to say.
That year when Coach Bisaccia took over. I've never been on a team with so much love for one another. I've never been on a team that fought for each other like that. I've never been on a team where there was so much unity and, there was a great function there, And for me, I think my greatest memory was at that moment, we had a decision to make. And our team decided that we weren't going to give in, when Rich took over. And we decided that, no, we're going to make something out of this. And it didn't end in a Super Bowl, but we did go to the playoffs for the second time, in my career there, and for the second time in 30 years there, And, to be a part of that team is something that's special to me.
So the question was, and the 9 years, all the records at the Raiders, and a bunch of lows, a couple highs. Like, what's your greatest memory? And that was that last run and playing for Bisaccia and coming together like that team did. It was interesting. Of all the things that he brought up, that's the number one thing that came to his mind.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was such a rough season, and going in there, and he actually got to play in that playoff game. So yeah, I can see that. I can see that. It does bring into perspective how special that season was, not just that, and that team and that circumstance. And yeah, man, it's just it's hard to keep that going multiple seasons in a row because there's turnover every single year. And there's never going to be that group of guys. And I said it after the season was over. We did the post-game show. It just sucks that this team, the way it is right now, is never going to be the same. Even if you put majority of the same players back in, the circumstances are different. Their headspaces are different. Maybe their motivations are a little bit different. It's not going to be like it was here. It was improbable, an improbable run, but it happened. And I can see how that's a super magic moment.
It's one of those things where it's like you want to find a way to replicate it, right? Because we talk about it all the time that, like, you have to have good players, you have to have good coaches. A bad locker room can tear all that apart, and a great locker room can build up bad teams, bad coaches, right? But it's like, how do you replicate that when it was forged out of tragedy, right? It was like the cauldron that was that season. Everything that could go wrong. And we play the what if, like, what if we would have kept Rich Bisaccia last year? What if, who knows? I don't think there's a single person on planet Earth that was better equipped to take over that team at that moment than Bisaccia, because he was a guy that just like loved guys into playing well. Not a brilliant X's and O's dude, not, a guy that's, has a history of like long sustained rosters. Like, but if you want to like get a group of men to come together for a cause, Richie B, baby. Like, I could not have thought of a better guy. In hindsight, it seems like the perfect guy.
For sure. He turned out to be the perfect guy for that situation at that time. That's the thing is most of the time you see these types of teams just crumble and collapse. And this team didn't. They had strong leadership in certain spots, and it kind of carried us through. And that's no short small part of Bisaccia's leadership. You also had a lot of overtime wins that they had. I mean, there's a lot of things, last second wins. I mean, there's a lot of things that went into that. And we were talking about this earlier. The way that you replicate this type of special team is by having more stake. Like when this team was like mostly sizzle and some steak. Like we played over our heads off of our ass, right? But you got to be better talent, good leadership, and you can have this multiple years in a row. And that's what the good teams do. They have good talent and they have good leadership. So how do we replicate that? Get better talent and have good leadership.
And that was part of at least my optimism with Josh McDaniels coming in. Was like, okay, the X's and O's he's proven as an offensive coordinator under the Pats to be amazing, right? Such with the Rams, such as the head coach. But the part that he seemed to struggle with when you talk to the former Broncos players 10 years ago was he didn't know how to manage a locker room, didn't know how to handle men. Like that was
relate to the players. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that was the big kind of like, that was his big failure his first time around. And you're like, okay, what a perfect locker room for that. We've got a great locker room. Everyone loves each other. They're playing for each other. They've overcome tragedy. Obviously you want your head coach to be able to do that, right? You want a head coach to be great at everything. But if there was one facet where you're like, okay, if our head coach can't be a 10 out of 10 at something, keeping a locker room together, okay, I could live with that. It didn't happen. The locker room still, by all accounts, kind of fell apart in certain ways. We can talk all day long about who we blame, but what happened that last season? Huh?
I don't know that there is blame. I don't know that there has to be blame. You know, it just is what it is. You know, you have people that are used to getting maybe a certain slack and leeway that, you know, not only were they not given that, but nobody was given that.
Yeah.
And some people can handle it and some people can't, man, you know? Yeah. So I don't want to say blame. I don't say that's anyone's fault. It's just the way it is. And, you know, he's come from, and we could talk about Bill Belichick all we want, but Josh McDaniels' dad was the same way. He was that hard ass coach too. So he learned that throughout his entire career, going up from his dad and also from Bill Belichick too. So, I mean, I've only really heard one guy that wants him out of the NFL, Brandon Marshall. I'm not saying he's a good coach or a great coach or a guy that we need to keep for long term. He still has a lot to prove, a whole lot. But I hear a lot more people saying good things about him.
Yeah, well, whatever was making that locker room what's special isn't there no more. And I think certainly the circumstances of 2 seasons ago that fostered it obviously can't be replicated unless there's some emails that Josh McDaniels gets.
Some emails and shit. I don't know that he would get quite quite the big story as Gruden was.
Yeah, like I don't want any of our receivers like driving too fast. I don't want emails coming out. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not something you can replicate. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, what was the equation 2 seasons ago? Let's do that again. It's like, no.
Yeah,
whatever it was gone.
Like how many overtime games did we win that year?
All of them.
It was like 4 or 5 or something like that. And it's a lot of things fell into place, man. And you have to have the people in place to do it, but the other team gets paid too. So I mean, they have players to make plays too. So yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot. It was a lot, and we'll get further into that with Mark Davis.
Yes, let's. So the ownership meeting, the owners' meetings are going down in Arizona, and all the coaches are there, the owners are there, GMs, scouts, personnel, all kinds of people, right? And they're, the owners are doing their rules meetings and other stuff, counting their billions of dollars that they're sitting on, their bags of gold bullion that they're using as carry-on their private jets. But one of the other cool things is that when everyone's under one roof for anything, you get a lot of interviews. And so Mark Davis done an interview, Dave Ziegler's done an interview, Josh McDaniels has done interviews. The Mark Davis one, I'm pulling from The Athletic, and I thoroughly enjoy The Athletic. If you prefer Las Vegas Review Journal or ESPN or someone else, that's on you. I think Vic Tafur does a fantastic job over there. And they spent half the interview talking about the Las Vegas Aces.
That was weird.
Kind of weird, but it's like, all right,
I'm on my phone. I'm just like scroll, aces,
yeah,
scroll,
like aces,
scroll.
aces. I guess if you're trying to butter up Mark Davis for some answers, you talk about your championship winning WNBA team. You know what I mean?
What he's doing.
Try to get him buttered up a little bit. Like if you want to get me excited, like you talk about like Sierra Nevada beer, you're like, hey, RJ, want to talk about beer? Yeah, sure. Okay. And then I'll tell you all my deep dart secrets 15 minutes later with Mark Davis, the Aces. So they finally made the move or finally transitioned to talking about the Raiders and was asked about, Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels first year. Didn't go as anyone hoped, right? 10-win season, very disappointing season following. What was your reaction to the season? You have to go back to how Josh and Dave became part of the Raider organization. I had hired Jon Gruden for 10 years. That was the stability I was looking for. I knew Jon and I believed in him and gave him the contracts. I gave him the opportunity to build this in his image the way he wanted to. We were only 3.5 years. We were only in for 3.5 years and he had to go. So now I went out and hired somebody else. And everybody that comes in thinks that they can see from the outside what this team is, and they look at the film and they say, okay, we can do it. Until you get here and work with the people that's in it, you don't really know who they are. So I personally feel that they were going to take a year to really understand who they were working with and everything like that. And then they would make decisions that would work towards the future. They did make a huge move when they first got here for Davante Adams, so that took away their draft last year. The third-round draft pick was the first we had. So coming in this year, it's a different story. They came in without a quarterback, basically, after they made the decision on Derek Carr. They decided on hiring Jimmy Garoppolo as our quarterback, and that's how they want to go into this season. They have 12 draft picks. Funny how he says they and not we. Like you and I say we, and it's his team, and he's like they. But I guess it's in the context.
Well, he's talking about Dave and
in the context of what he's talking about.
Yeah,
and we'll see what they do. It's up to Dave Ziegler, really, who's a general manager now, to start putting together a roster and really putting this team together for the future. For me, I hire people. One thing I know is what I don't know. I hire people that do know those things. I let them do their job. I give them vision and goals and let the results speak for themselves. A lot to unpack there, Soto. What's the first takeaway you have?
I think Mark Davis is a lot more aware of himself than people think. But the biggest thing is,
like, as a fashion icon.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the not knowing what you have, like because you could think you know what you have in a team from afar, but you don't really know until you come in here and you work with it. Yeah. I don't know how you take that. I take that as, as kind of what we talked about with the Rich Bisaccia season. Is it was very fluky. They did win those games, but if you take a deeper look at it, it was a lot of sizzle, not a lot of steak, a lot of fortunate wins, last minute overtime wins, stuff like that, that normally isn't replicated year after year after year. We saw the lack of talent on the defensive side and how that hurt us in both seasons. So, I mean, I took it as his kind of saying, like, yeah, maybe some people thought that we were better than we were because of where we finished.
I think that's the truth, but that's definitely a pivot. Like, I take this thing that he said. Personally, I felt that they were going to take a year to really understand who they were working with and everything like that. And then they would make decisions that work towards the future.
Yeah, like I said, like, I mean, they couldn't go in there and blow it up.
That's not what Mark said before the season. Mark said, we're going to keep winning. We're going to the playoffs. We're going to win championships. This whole like, oh, I knew that they were going to need a year. No, you didn't. That's not what you said at all. You were gung-ho. Hey, this is a roster that's built for winning now. Get Davante Adams, get Chandler Jones. Let's start. Let's keep this momentum going. Mm-hmm. So, I think he's correct in that.
What owner's going to say that, though?
He's saying it right now.
After the fact. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
If he feels that at the time, what owner's going to say that going into a season? Coming off, I mean, like everyone had to be on
going into this season.
Back. I mean, I understand, but no. Going into last season, you had to be like, oh, we won last year, and we're going to continue winning this year. Of course, you have to run it back to see if you can recapture that. Like you said, you have to do that. You're also, you got to be optimistic.
My point being, the overall gist I got from this interview, and not just this one quote, but I think like a good chunk of the non-WNBA discussion of this interview was that Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler have very long leashes. I think even longer than maybe you even want. I'm definitely getting the vibe where they could have another 6-win season and Mark Davis is going to run it back. Same crew, same guys, no major changes. That's the vibe I'm getting. Now, again, if we're 1-5 and Mark Davis is hearing some shit, he can change. But this tune is very different than last season. This tune, and Josh McDaniels gave kind of a similar vibe as well. We'll get to Josh McDaniels in a little bit, kind of like, hey, we need to build something. It takes time. And at first, and he's been saying that for a month. At first, I was like, okay, that's Ziegler, or that's Josh McDaniels saying things that you want to kind of give yourself an opportunity for another not great season, still keep your job. When the boss is saying it, that means it's coming on high. That means Josh McDaniels is just kind of echoing, I feel like, what Mark Davis is saying. Take your time, build for the future.
You want everyone on the same page, man. We talked about that. And Ziegler talked about that. That's the way you win in the NFL, is you have everybody on the same page. And if I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I'm not saying that this is the way it is or the way it isn't, okay? But if you go in as a talent evaluator, which is basically what a GM is, a talent evaluator, and you go in as a coach, and you go in and you talk to the head coach and you said, look, this is where we are now. This is where some of these contracts that the old regime left us, that we still have a huge dead cap hit. This is where we are now. This is the talent that we have now. This is how you want to win in the future. That's why we're doing a lot of one-year contracts, because what we're doing with those one-year contracts is we're replacing rookies that aren't that are supposed to be on a rookie deal contributing to this team. We're paying for them by getting one-year players instead of paying less than what we would pay a one-year contract guy to pay a rookie on a rookie deal. We're having to do that. We're having to build a roster with one-year guys because our rookies aren't building the depth of that roster, right? The guys on the rookie contracts. So if he's saying, look at the talent that we have, we need to build the right way, and it's going to take some time. We were talking about this earlier. The huge mistake that was made, however you feel about Reggie McKenzie, however you feel about Jack Del Rio, however you feel about those guys, okay? I don't know that Mark Davis was looking to get rid of them. I think that it just so happened that Jon Gruden wanted to coach again. Because 2 years before that, McKenzie got executive of the year. And, we talked about drafting not being an exact science, and, it goes in waves. But he was given a fucking grease fire of a franchise, even worse dead caps, the shit that we have now. He spent a couple of years to deconstruct that roster and start building it back up. And I think that was a huge mistake. And I think that he learned from that mistake, where he just because he saw that shining star, that shiny coin in Jon Gruden, he got rid of two guys that were, still in football. I mean, Jack Del Rio is a successful defensive coordinator. His defenses in Washington are pretty good. And you look at Reggie McKenzie as a senior executive, personnel executive with Miami. Miami's got a fucking kick-ass roster, dude. Like, he's basically an assistant GM over there. So, I mean, these guys are still in the league. They're still doing well. It's like, you could have had that stability, that plan, and you had to pivot. And it took a year, not even a year. It took an off season for Gruden to break up, to trade away two of your best three players and then waste those picks, right?
Yeah.
So without that, I mean, what would have happened with this team? How would this team be constructed differently? They could still be here.
Well, look, continuity. It just sounds like Mark Davis is hoping for continuity, right? Jon Gruden 10-year deal. He's giving a very long leash to the Ziegler, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you do when you know you've got the right guy, right? Like I play a lot of poker, right? And I'll sit at a poker table and I'll lose 2, 3, 4 buy-ins, but I have I'm not a brilliant poker player, but I have the self-awareness to be like, all right, am I getting outplayed or the car's not landing, right? Am I going all in with the better hand and I get rivered, or am I getting outplayed and that's why I'm losing, right? Multiple times I've lose like 4 buy-ins in a row. I'm like, this table's terrible. I'll rebuy in and I'll get it all back, right? It's like continuity. If you're at the right table, you stay there, right? If you're at a bad table, you bounce. I don't know if Josh McDaniels is that table. Like, you look, again, we talked about how Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler came into a situation for first-year head coaches, you just don't get better situations than that. Maybe it's not as great as maybe on the surface, still much better than most head coaches get in their first time, right? Like, Doug Peterson in Jacksonville last season, worst situation, went to the playoffs. Brian Daboll in with the Giants, worst situation, went to the playoffs. Like Kevin O'Connell, good season. Mike McDaniel in Miami, good season. Like these are all first-year coaches that on paper had worse situations and had good seasons. So I'm not so quick to be like, well, he's got some bad Jon Gruden regime shit to deal with. It's like, yeah, but other guys did it. Other first-year coaches did more with worse.
When you say more with worse, I don't necessarily agree with that. These teams have a talent. They had more talent on both sides of the ball. Let's say they didn't have the top end talent, the same name value that we had top end wise. Like I don't see that any one of those teams having a Devontae Adams or a Max Crosby, but they had more talented distributed throughout the roster.
There's some of that. Sure. I don't think it's that night and day difference. I think our team played well beneath their talent last season as well. And
just like they played well above it the year before.
Sure. And now they're playing worse. Man. Where I think these other head coaches got the most out of who they had. Like what Dabble did in New York. Like, dude, like turning that team around. Again, not saying Josh McDaniels should be fired. I'm saying this really, really long leash that Mark Davis is clearly giving them. I hope it doesn't break and whip back and take our eye out, because other coaches have been able to succeed right away.
Yeah, and that's not normally the case. But also,
just name 5 guys who did last season.
Okay, and I'm saying it's not normally the case. Okay. It happens, fine, but it's not normally the case. But it's also just words. Just like last week was freaking Mayock with Waller. It's just words, man. It's how he feels. Doesn't mean it's the actual thing. It doesn't mean it's true. Same thing here. It's an interview that he's giving, and he wants to be supportive. Okay. But support only goes so far.
You don't think Mark Davis is going to give him that long of a leash?
I think that Mark Davis wants to give him that long of a leash. But like I said last week, when you said, okay, when would you cut bait on these guys? Like I said, by the bye week, if we're not competitive, maybe we're losing, we're 500, maybe a game below 500, but we're competitive. We're in game. You're seeing that they're being competitive. I see that being okay. But if we're 1-5 and we're getting blown out, yeah, I see them making a change, because things change for the circumstances.
So along the same lines, again, another interview from The Athletic, this time with Josh McDaniels.
They were busy, bro.
They're at the owners area, man. They're getting to work. Good for them. Good on that one. I mean, that's what they're paid to do. So get your shit together, boys. This is Josh McDaniels. We're always going to try to win. Good. We're always going to try to win, but we also understand that there is a long game too. The short game is you try to do everything you can with what you have to try to be as successful as possible, but at the same time, investing in your draft, investing in the development of players so that over the course of 10, 12, 15 years, you have great success. It echoes a lot of what Mark Davis said. I think this has been a conversation, clearly, between the head coach, GM, and owner about what the goals are. So whether, like you think, okay, I don't think the leash is quite that long, it's just being supportive, or
I think he wants it to be that long. I think he wants it to be that long.
Well, then it's not a long leash if he's doing well. You know what I mean? Like a long leash only applies if he's like has another bad season and gets a third. Like that's a long leash. If they start turning things around next season, it's not a leash. It's your results speak for yourself.
But RJ, circumstances change, right? Like if we're just getting blown out every game, where's the improvement here? I get it.
Time out. It was Rory who said, "When do you cut bait?" asking for a hard answer. I'm not asking for, because I'm with you. I'm asking for a hard answer. I'm not saying they have to be at week 9, 5-3. Like, no, I'm 100% with you. Like, context matters. Like, if Crosby goes down in week 2,
jeez, why you didn't put that out there?
Right, and we lose like 3 2-point games. Like, okay, that context matters. If we start out really rough, but we're gaining momentum, right? Like we play better every single week. Like we're 3-6, but we're playing better every single week, and we're starting to build to something. Okay, right? Like I'm with you. I'm I don't want a hard number either because the context is really important. But Josh McDaniels has not earned the benefit of the doubt. He has done nothing to earn the benefit of the doubt, is all I'm saying. And when when Mark Davis's entire philosophy for keeping his coach is, well, I want continuity. Like that's your only thing that you're happy about your coach with, is that you don't want the pain of changing. That's not a high. It's not a high.
I don't think that's what he's saying, dude. I think he's saying that he's giving them a chance because he wants continuity. Mm-hmm. If we go out there and we're getting the shit kicked out of us every single week, but fuck continuity, your coaches is showing you that they're not capable. Mm-hmm. So why would you keep someone that trumps everything else?
Yeah.
So yeah, I get what you're saying, but it doesn't have to be exclusively that.
Speaking of continuity, Dave Ziegler, like he's pretty tight-lipped. Like he says like nothing.
He's a pro, bro.
Most of the time, which you kind of need for your, you kind of need out of your GM, like maybe not because he had a decade of like TV under his belt. Like he was good about giving you a sound bite, keeping people happy without showing your cards, Ziegler doesn't give a shit. He's just like, I'm just going to talk in circles forever.
Yeah.
But he did say something that we've been talking about for almost 2 full seasons now. Continuity at line. The question you mentioned at the Athletic, you mentioned at the Senior Bowl, the offensive line's position group you need to address, but you haven't. In free agency, you've re-signed players, Brandon Parker, Jermaine Illuminor, Rasu Muti, all those guys. No outside additions. And what did Ziegler say? I think there's a lot of value in the offensive line in, you guessed it, continuity. There's a tremendous amount of value in there because it is kind of a synchronized group. Ultimately, we have 3 guys that are coming back that were starters for us last year: Colton Miller, Dylan Parham, Andre James. And then we brought back Jermaine and Brandon, have Munford back. I think there's a lot of value in that. I think there's other opportunities to continue to improve that position. Let's continue to do it in free agency. And obviously, we're going to have the draft coming up to continue that, yada, yada, yada. So we've been saying this for a while. Again, I have to find that stat. I have to find that stat somewhere where it was like 10 times that O-lines played every snap together. Like 8 of those teams went to the Super Bowl. It's in the last like 20 years. It's an insane number. It's a crazy number that if all 5 offensive linemen can play every snap together for a season, those teams go to the Super Bowl 80% of the time. It's something like, I don't know the exact number, but it's insane. They've read that stat too somewhere. And the good thing is here, that's also a great excuse for not doing dog shit on the O-line, because this is what worries me, is because when he was asked the same question about the defense, it was talking in circles coach speak. When he's asked that question about the offense, it was the right answer. It's the answer we've been talking about forever. Yeah, continuity is important. We're going to keep doing it. We're going to use our assets elsewhere. You have a plan. There's a reason why you're making moves or not making moves at line. When you ask that same question about defense, you get talking circles coach speak.
I think it's the same thing, man. I think they're doing the same thing, but it's easier with the offensive line because there's less positions to fill. Like I said, they're signing these 1-year guys to take place of those players that would have still been on rookie contracts.
Yeah.
So they're building, and then when they get more picks and they sign guys to a longer contract or whatever, then they can kind of grow it. But I don't know that people appreciate how lacking talent our defense is.
Yeah.
And even if a guy does really well on a 1-year contract, they're going to go sign somewhere else for more money. So that's the hard part of signing these guys, but they're doing it for a reason. They're not blowing a bunch of money on a player because that one player isn't going to make our defense a whole lot better right away. And then they're gone after a couple of years, or 3 years, and we get 1 year of them with a good defense, So like I said before, with what the Patriots do, or they did, is they don't get a high-priced free agent defensively unless that guy's going to put them over the top, like Matthew Judon. Same thing. They would have had a good defense without him, but putting him on that line, off that edge, puts them over the top. So that's when they went and got him. Normally, they would just build through the draft their defense, and that's what we're trying to do. The reason why we have so many short 1-year guys is because those guys are taking place of draft picks that busted from the previous regimes.
It just feels like they're going all in on the offense and they're going full rebuild on defense. It's like
I said that it's a reload offensively and a rebuild defensively because the roster was so unbalanced.
but it just feels weird because you're like, okay, we're building an offense to win now, but we're building a defense to win in 2 years. It seems like a weird allocation of resources. Like, why get Jacoby Myers? Why get Jimmy Garoppolo? Like, are you know what I'm saying? Like, are you
Well, you got Jacoby Myers to take place of Waller.
like you have no choice but to
you got
rebuild the
Garoppolo
defense.
because you didn't have a quarterback.
You could draft one, or you had Stidham. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, again, but then
you're
you
either
have
rebuilding
Josh
completely or
Jacobs.
you're not. If you're rebuilding only half your team, then what's the point of like spending money on the offense if the defense you're like, we're not planning on winning for another year or two?
That's not. They didn't say they weren't planning on winning.
They're not saying it, but that's what they're doing.
They said the exact opposite. We always want to win. So what are they doing? They're giving themselves the best chance to win by strengthening their strength, but they can't strengthen that weakness in one off season. They have. It's going to take time because of the lack of depth. So what do? You don't want to waste Devontae Adams' good years in his contract. You want to waste Josh Jacobs in the 2 years you can freaking franchise tag the guy. So you try to win offensively and get better defensively.
But you either want to win or you don't, right? You're either like, okay, it's a rebuild year. We're going to try to win, but we're planning on winning in 2024, 2025.
They're banking on their offense carrying them.
But by not addressing your defense at all?
They are addressing the defense, RJ. Maybe
No,
not the
they're
way
not.
you want them to be addressed. Maybe
They're
not the way
special teams guys and being like, oh, maybe he'll start for us at safety. He's been a special teams guy for 4 years. They're not addressing the defense. They're like throwing bodies at holes.
You cannot agree with their plan defensively, but you can't say they're not addressing it. We haven't even seen the draft yet.
They're not addressing in any way that leads to any confidence, right? Like they got expensive guys for offense, not nobody on defense.
Because they're trying to win with their offense. They're trying to win offensively.
But they're doing nothing on defense. Like
you can't say they did nothing because the draft hasn't happened yet. You don't know their plan.
All we can do is judge what's happening so far. And if their plan is, we're going to have like 7 rookies start on the defense and that's the solution, then that's a bad plan.
I said that last week. If you're banking on that, it happened twice last year.
You get what I'm saying, though, right? Like,
no, I understand what you're saying, but it's like you're condemning their plan. When you don't
either
know
the entire roster is in a rebuild, or the entire roster is in a win. That. Yes, you have to do that.
No,
you have to do it that way.
You have to do that. If you're trying to win now, what do you? Then why keep Devontae Adams? Then why keep Josh Jacobs? Why don't you just why do that? You have players on your team that can help you win. If you have we saw it ourselves. Super Bowl winners, not playoff teams, none of that stuff. Super Bowl winners. You've shown if you have a good offense, you can have a middle of the road defense.
No. What it was you had Hall of Fame coaches, Hall of Fame quarterbacks, which we have neither of. That's what won Super Bowls. Hall of Fame coaches, Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and running backs that you don't pay more than $2 million to. That was what the stats were. And we're doing opposite of all three. You're trying to improve the offense. Great. Cool. You're trying to improve the offense. Great. But you're just leaving the defense as just dead weight. Like you're not addressing in any major way. Like what's the best defensive acquisition we made? Backup safeties? Like it's either the entire roster is like, all right, as a team, as a mindset, we're rebuilding. We're still going to try to win. We're still going to do our best. But, let's let these draft picks develop. Or let's try to win. That's why we signed Garoppolo and why we signed Jacoby. And we try to make our offense better. But the defense is still left in the lurch. And again, you're right. Free agency isn't over yet. Still not the draft. But the plan is like, we have a bunch of rookies carry this defense. It's a full rebuild year. And you're spending money on Myers and Garoppolo for no reason.
I don't know necessarily that your way is the only way, RJ. You take a look at a roster that's so normally when you see rebuilds, like there's a lack of talent everywhere. You have maybe 1 or 2 guys that are even like Pro Bowl caliber. And you know how I feel about the Pro Bowl. Okay. We have more than that, especially offensively. So if you're trying to win, you can still keep it going offensively. And you have to address that lack of talent defensively. You have to address it somehow. And you address it by drafting well. You don't want to give up picks for players. You want to do the opposite. You want to get more picks. You want to get younger over there so you can fill those gaps with lesser money guys and not have to spend $2 million on a backup safety because you're paying them $800,000 for 4 years or 3 years. So
it feels like we're getting to like a Gruden repeat a little bit, where like McDaniels cares so much about the offense, he wants his guys, he'll spend the money, and on defense he's just like, figure it out, Patrick Graham.
We'll see. We'll see when the draft comes. We'll see, because Gruden didn't even give two shits about the defense.
Yeah. At all.
But the thing is, what I don't want to have happen is I don't want us throwing a bunch of money at Kwiatkowski, at Littleton, at Joyner. I don't want us throwing a bunch of money at these guys, at these type of players, and hopefully they turn out being something good. I would rather build so we have a good foundation of solid players. So when we do reach out for the top end guys, not just guys that we pay to be top end guys, but actually get top end guys for agent wise, then they're going to make a difference.
But you don't have a problem spending money on Myers and Garoppolo.
You needed that.
You need defense too. You also need defense. We need defensive players way more than we need pass catchers.
RJ.
We need defensive players way more than we need another pass catcher in Myers. Clearly, like,
look,
we can all agree on that. Please tell me we can agree on that. Okay.
But here's the issue that we're going into right now. If we're trying to win games right now, we have to do it offensively because our offense is better than a lot better than our defense. Okay, throwing a bunch of money at guys, you've seen how that works out. Okay, you're better off building the defense the way the offense was built, with draft picks, with guys that you get through the team, and then you get those one or two pieces. You got Jacoby Myers because you were getting
wasn't built that way. Devontae Adams was bought. Jimmy Garoppolo was bought. Myers was bought.
Okay,
all the tight ends were bought.
You're not letting me finish.
Okay.
We needed to get Jacoby Myers because we were getting rid of Waller. He's basically taking Waller's place. Because Waller was not a tight end. Waller was a slot receiver. He only lined up at tight end like 25% of the time. Okay. So he was a slot receiver. Okay.
He was a tight end, so we could pay him less.
Yeah, exactly.
We could pay him like a tight end.
And we got Garoppolo because we needed a quarterback.
We need every position on defense.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
but RJ, you're not gonna build a sustained success through free agency. You're not.
I agree, but that's what they're doing on offense. You don't have a problem with
because your offense is already good, and if you want to win, you have to win offensively. If you're this team,
I think I disagree. I think McDaniels wants his offense, and he's saying, "I don't care about defense."
I don't think that's true at all. I don't think that's true at all.
Free agency certainly feels that way.
We'll see what happens during the draft and who they get and where the mix is. Because if they drafted a bunch of wide receivers and running backs in the draft, then I agree with you. But I doubt they're going to do that.
Well, Soto, we only have 6 running backs on our roster. I mean, that's
how many of them are on our roster though? How many actually play?
Britton Brown was on the 53. He was not on the practice squad. He was on the team. All 6.
Okay. Let me ask you this. How many linebackers do we have?
I don't know. 5?
Like 4. But the backups, the backup linebackers and backup running backs, special team wise, are the same.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, instead of having, maybe you take one less running back away and put one more backup linebacker, they're still the same. It's the same thing. They're just special teams guys.
It should have just been Jacobs, Jakobsen,
Abdullah,
and either Bolden or Abdullah. Like, that should have been it. Because no one else played. Like, Zamir, how many carries did he have entire season? 25 all season? Like, it was weird. The offensive roster is weird. It's like overloaded in weird ways, and the defense is underloaded drastically. Anyway, along those exact same lines, the big free agent signing this week, a wide receiver.
Whoopee!
Another pass catcher.
To be fair, he's a returner.
It's a 1-year deal for $2 million. I'm not blowing up about it. It's just
special teams guy, a returner.
It's yet another, but you get what I'm saying. Like, on paper, you're like, oh great, another receiver. Deandre Carter signing a 1-year deal, $2.375 million. It's always nice having a former Charger on the roster, right? Get a little bit of like, what were you guys doing? A little bit of a breakout season last season. He only started 7 games. So again, another special teamer depth dude, but 46 passes, 538 yards, 3 touchdowns. One of those touchdowns was a really good 25-yarder. against us last season. So I think that's always a big part of it. When a coach or a GM sees a player play against your team, they stick out a lot more because you actually see it in real time and you think, oh, we can do something here. But that's really it this week. I mean, free agency really, really slowed down as it normally does in week 3 of free agency, but that's really it. Alex Barr's back up, guard back on board, what you're stoked about.
Well, one thing that you glanced over is Carter was second in the league in punt return average yards.
Yeah, good punt returner.
So if you can be a good player on special teams, and he's younger than Amir Abdullah, and if you can do that for a cheap price and maybe not have Hunter do it because he now has concussion history, I think it's a good thing. And you offer maybe some injury insurance at wide receiver. That's always a good thing. If you can be multiple, if you can be
and another speedster, like he's pretty quick, and that's what this team really needed. And it's $2 million. Like, good signing. Like, if he can do 3 different things, I mean, again, it's another depth dude backup, but for that price,
why not?
Signing. For that price, good signing. Ready to do some what windbags?
Yes, sir.
Rocket Head. Love it when I get Rocket Head. All I have to do to forget about the fact Darren Waller was traded is listen to his terrible music.
God damn.
Is
Have you heard his
bad?
shit? It's bad, dude.
Is it really bad?
It's bad. It's like, I don't know
as
how
soon
to
as like when I follow him on Instagram and it's him rapping, I just scroll. Like, I'm just scrolling. You still follow him on social media?
Nah.
No? Yeah, I stopped too.
Nah.
It's too painful. You know what I mean?
Not that. It's just cringe, dude.
Yeah.
It's just like like 90% of the shit that he posted was about music. Or more.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, man. Maybe he's pumping up his music because he had an album coming out or a song coming out or something like that, but he didn't really post much about football.
Reality check. This team will not be successful until the Davis family sells. This is a topic that comes up every few months, and we touch on it every now and then. The news this week, a little bit of the news is Mark Davis said that he had a pretty good heart-to-heart with Derek Carr when he saw him. Said he apologized to Carr for, when you talk about continuity, the only thing that's been consistent with the Raiders is Mark Davis, right? Bunch of head coaches, quarterback.
And he said that.
GMs, executives, presidents. And he's like, look, I've been the only consistent thing here. So at the end of the day, the guy on top gets all the credit, all the blame, whether that's true or not, right? Whether it's like his decision-making that made you successful or his decision-making that made you not successful, the buck stops there. I'm not going to go so far as to say it's impossible to be successful with Mark Davis as our owner, but I think the results speak for themselves, that he's not a craft or, like some of these owners, like you can generally see how they run a business helps the team on the field, right? You can kind of see it, right? The Steelers have that. The Pats have that. The Chiefs have that. And you can see opposite, like with the Chargers, like constant clusterfuck. Like you have to assume that part of that is Spanos, or not a part of it, a decent chunk of it,
a big part of it
is ownership, right? Like he's fumble fucking that franchise around, right? Mark Davis isn't anywhere near that bad, but we're not getting like, I hate admitting it, but like a Robert Kraft level of like, oh yeah, like it's trickling down how to run a good establishment.
Yeah, I go back to the whole Gruden year, the 2018, the 17 offseason heading into 18. I think he jumped the gun because he wanted Gruden for so long.
Yep.
And he jumped the gun and he maybe squashed something that had the chance of being a long-term success if he would have let it go. Because Reggie was coming into his own. Del Rio was coming into his own. The team was coming into their own. They had some issues that year that caused them. I don't think we've really gotten the full story of what happened that 17 season. But he just got rid of everyone was gone. And then Gruden came in here and he undid everything that franchise did. So I think that one decision put them back a lot, and unfortunately, Derek Carr paid for it. I
think this next season will be really telling. Like, I keep painting it negatively, but like, let's just assume it's another bad season, right? Just for sake of this argument.
You never. It's always negative with you, man.
It just feels that way, man. Looking at this roster and our last season. But as far as Mark Davis is concerned, if this season is bad and Mark Davis sticks with McDaniels and Ziegler, then that means he's a changed man. Because we've seen, as soon as a coach is bad, he's off. He's done. Like, unless it's Gruden, his buddy, he's ready to move on from a coach real fast. He doesn't give coaches benefit of the doubt. If he does that with McDaniels, then we know that Mark Davis is a changed man because that hasn't been his MO as owner. If it's another bad season and we're 3/4 of the way in and we both kind of agree, like, yeah, we're not moving well, team's not playing well, not being competitive, losing record, and Mark Davis moves on, then it's the same Mark Davis. It's like only Jon Gruden gets the benefit of the doubt. Everyone else, what's the next sparkly, shiny thing that I can grab and hire? It's a very telling year. It's a very telling year for as long as Mark Davis remains owner of the Raiders. And he's a pretty healthy dude for his age. He's not selling. I mean, this next season will be very telling on how Mark Davis will handle this team for the next couple decades.
I'll tell you something right now. Him winning with the Aces may have changed his mind a little bit. This is what winning feels like. Okay, great. How do I do it? What? And Mark Davis could have talked to, because him and Jerry Jones talk a lot. And if he talked to Jerry Jones is like, look, man, you need to find a guy that you trust, stick with them, and build that roster. Your roster's dog shit. Could have been, if we're going to throw, wild speculations out there about, JMD tanked and all this other shit, right?
He didn't tank.
No, he didn't tank.
He didn't tank.
Yeah, but everyone wants to say that shit.
Yeah. Connecticut, you don't tank and you get Chandler Jones and
you don't
Devontae Adams.
Tank when you're a second-time head coach and your first tenure landed so poorly, and you don't go and just try to lose your first season. You're
coming off a 10-win team. Like, come on.
You just don't do that, man.
Connecticut Raider Ryan. This is when we were talking about the Hooters
Chicken Ranch.
At the Chicken Ranch that want to give Jimmy G sex like free for life.
Gratis.
So what does the backup quarterback get? Sloppy seconds? Third string gets reach around handies? I think we have to settle this. You got 53 men on that roster. We know what the head coach, we know what the quarterback gets. Just Chase Garbers get like
everyone has to get a release. Okay. So Jimmy G gets to smash, the backup gets dome, and the third stringer gets a handy.
And the long snapper has to film it.
The long snapper gets the prostate massage.
Josh McDaniels gets a direct. Imagine Josh McDaniels with like a sleazy like Hawaiian.
I can't picture him with that forehead, bro. I can't.
Big gold chain sitting on some chest hair. Little casting couch.
Not touching the skin, just like laying on the chest.
Just laying on the chest hair because there's
big
so much of it.
Medallion right there. Oh, terrible.
Wide receivers get something flashy. Wide receivers get something fun.
They get the Hura's like over 18 daughters.
Okay. They get the daughters. Defense gets shit, just like the rest of the team.
Right?
You're all in 1-year deals.
Offensive line, sorry, we're gonna build from young guys.
You get quarters for the Jack Shack down the street.
Right? Here's a roll of quarters. Go ahead and freaking lay on that bed.
All right, that's it for us.
Wait. Have you ever stayed in a hotel that had a massage bed?
Absolutely.
God, they're fucking awful.
Absolutely. Well, this is the thing: is it's not like it's the massage bed that like rolls.
No,
it's just a giant piston that just rotates and it like bounces on the legs bounce up and down off the thing.
Off the ground.
So it's like loud. And it's not even like a motion where you're like, all right, this is going to help me bang this chick. It's like, no chick wants to be like.
It's a fucking earthquake is what it is.
Like we're puppy pit bulls. I'll admit, though, I did put $1 in just to see what it felt like.
Did you grab your piece or what?
No, I got off. I was just like, not. I
got. You got off, huh?
I got off the bed. Yeah, not that way, sicko.
You said it, not me.
This podcast never talks that way.
Never.
All All right, that's it for us. I'm taking a red eye next Wednesday, so I want to get a guest next week, but they're gonna have to be a stricter schedule, so we'll figure that out. We'll keep doing lives throughout as well as things keep changing, as news comes in, as this roster continues to grow. But until then, Noggin would have here with me. Hey, you made it to the end of our video. Great job. I know you want more. Go ahead and click the next video and don't forget to subscribe.